Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening episode Pursue. This is Pursue 15S, which is Hematology Erythrocytic Disorder, and we are streaming live from PGIMS Rohtak via Kolkata. We have a very interesting topic and very important person to speak on the topic. The topic of the day is erythrocytic disorder as a result of chemical and physical agents, hemolytic anemia resulting from immune injury. And to talk on that, we have Dr. Veena Gupta. She's an MBBS and MD PAT. Presently, she's a professor in the Department of Pathology at Pandit B.D. Sharma PGIMS Rohtak with a total teaching experience of more than 20 years. Postgraduate teacher for the last 12 years, supervised and co-supervised thesis of more than 12 postgraduate students, more than 100 publications in national and international journals, multiple presentations in national conferences. Before I ask Madam to start, let me request all of you to keep your mic muted, your camera off, and please don't share your screen. With this, let me request, ma'am, please share your screen and let's start.
Good evening, all of you. Thank you, Dr. Nadeem, for your kind words. I would also like to thank Dr. Anita for giving me the opportunity to discuss such an important and interesting topic, that is erythrocyte disorders due to physical and chemical agents and immune hemolytic anemia. So, as all of us know, this erythrocyte, they are produced from pluripotent stem cells, which become later on lineage specific. They form burst forming unit erythroid, then colony forming unit erythroid, and then the erythroblast, they differentiate into erythroblast, then progressive series of maturation, mature red blood cells are formed. And these mature red blood cells, they have no nucleus, mitochondria or ribosomes. They are not able to synthesize new proteins, carry out oxidative reaction or undergo mitosis. Elasticity and viscosity of the membrane is important for survival, and lifespan of normal mature RBC is 100 to 120 days, which may be decreased if hostile environment or there is increased susceptibility to lysis. And the senile cells, they are removed by bone marrow and splenic macrophages. Hemolytic state exists when survival of RBC is shortened, and anemia occurs if onset of hemolysis is sudden with no time for marrow compensation, or in case of severe chronic hemolysis when mean red blood cell life is very short. So when hemolysis occurs, RBCs, they are broken down, the content they are carrying, they are released, and hemoglobin, it is broken down to heme and globin, iron that is bound to transferrin, and it is taken back to marrow for further formation of new RBCs. Then heme is broken down to bilirubin. It is conjugated by liver and excreted in the urine. But if excess of bilirubin is formed, which exceeds the capacity of conjugation, this unconjugated bilirubin increases, and this leads to increased bilirubin level, which get accumulated in the sclera and the skin, giving rise to icterus and jaundice. Then, if hemoglobin RBCs that are broken down in the circulation, they release hemoglobin in the plasma, which lead to hemoglobinemia, and this hemoglobin is excreted into the urine, and some of this is absorbed through the proximal tubular cells, converted into hemosiderin, and there is hemosideриnuria also. So, intravascular and extravascular hemolysis, some features are common, that is both have anemia. Red cell lyse, so there is increased LDH level. Haptoglobin can be decreased in both, but hemoglobinemia, hemoglobinuria and hemosideриnuria, they are seen in intravascular hemolysis, whereas in extravascular hemolysis, plasma hemoglobin is not increased, it is normal. This is the peripheral blood picture which is seen in hemolytic anemia. There is anisocytosis, there is poikilocytosis. Due to polychromatophilic cells, some are larger RBCs, spherocyte formation, some are smaller RBCs. There may be fragmented RBCs. Nucleated red cell, they are also released into the circulation. So this is the picture which gives a hint of hemolytic anemia. And bone marrow shows erythroid hyperplasia. These are the erythroblasts. So normally ME ratio is 1 is this 3 is to 1, but it may be reversed. So hemolytic anemia may be classified according to the site of hemolysis, intravascular or extravascular, onset of hemolysis, acute or chronic, cause and type of defect. The defect can be inherited, defect in the cell membrane, hemoglobin structure, cytoplasmic constituent or enzyme defect. Or defect can be acquired defect which alter the susceptibility to lysis. Today we will concentrate on acquired defect of RBCs. So this is the normal mature RBC of biconcave shape. So either there can be inherited defect of red cell membrane, that is spherocytosis, eleptocytosis, etc. There may be defect in certain enzymes. There may be defect of hemoglobin, hemoglobinopathies, thalassemia and sickle disease, or there may be acquired defect. So defect can be either in the vessel, microangiopathy, hemolytic anemia. There may be antibody production which destroy the RBCs. There may be direct damaging effect of certain agent, direct toxic effect. There can be acquired red cell membrane defect or massive splenomegaly causing increased sequestration of RBCs. So acquired hemolytic anemia we will discuss today. So this can be divided into immune hemolytic anemia and non-immune hemolytic anemia. Immune hemolytic anemia can be due to autoimmune mechanism or alloimmune mechanism, and non-immune cases can be drugs, physical or chemical agent. Drug can also cause hemolysis by immune mechanism. So first we discuss immune hemolytic anemia in detail. Immune hemolytic anemia. This is initiated by binding of immunoglobulin IgG or IgM. These antibodies due to various mechanisms. So it can be drug-induced hemolytic anemia, autoimmune hemolytic anemia. It is important to determine the process because each type requires specific treatment. This immune hemolytic anemia requires antigen-antibody reaction, and type of reaction depend upon the class of antibody, number and spacing of antigenic sites on the cell, availability of complements, environmental temperature, and functional status of reticuloendothelial system. So destruction of RBCs can be through direct mechanism. It is always IgG mediated because macrophage, they don't have receptor for Fc portion of immunoglobulin. So IgG can be recognized by macrophages and RBCs. If antibodies they are attached to the RBC membrane, they can be destroyed. So macrophage mediated, and this is responsible for extravascular hemolysis. It may be seen in spleen and liver. And this can also lead to extravascular hemolysis, or if there is massive complement activation, they can form membrane attack complex. Formation is prevented by our body's protecting mechanism. But if protecting mechanism are overwhelmed, like in paroxysmal cold hemoglobinuria or excessive antigenic stimulation transfusion reaction, there may be intravascular hemolysis also. And complement activation is mainly through IgM, but IgG, they can also activate the complement. Why IgG cause less activation than IgM? The complement, they are activated when this C1 bind to Fc portion of immunoglobulin, IgG or IgM. But IgM is a strong activator of complement, whereas IgG, they are weak activator of complement. I will describe you how this happens. C1q molecule, it has 6 globular head with 6 stems which are joined together by a stem in a bunch. Each head has binding site which is specific for Fc portion of immunoglobulin, and binding for a single head is very weak, which lasts for fraction of second only. So firm binding which should last for several minutes to activate further complement, it requires interaction of at least two head with Fc portion of immunoglobulin. IgG also has two C1q binding site because all of us know FAB and FC portion, they have two light head and heavy chains, and there is a FC portion, but it exists in the monomeric form. It has two binding sites, one in each of its FC domain, but they are located on the opposite side of FC domain. And C1 molecule is inflexible. So it cannot join the two of its binding site of FC portion. So at least two IgG molecule must be bound in close proximity of RBC for complement activation. So number of copies of antigen per RBC or distribution of antigen on RBC, evenly distributed or they are clustered, that determine the complement activation. So if antigen they are numerous or this antibodies they are formed in such a way that they can bind two heads, then complement are activated. IgM, whereas it exists in the pentameric form, so it can activate the complement by exposing if C1q binding site are exposed by IgM acquiring the stepple configuration. So at least two of unit of IgM engage the cellular antigen. So this lead to complement activation. So because of this pentameric structure, IgM can activate the complement strongly rather than IgG. So if any of the mechanism, if complement they are activated, then this C1 bind to C4, then C2, and lastly they activate the C3. So C3b is formed. This C3b bound RBC, C3b act as an opsonin, so they are recognized by the macrophages, leading to extravascular hemolysis, and more of it macrophages which recognize this C3b bound, they are in the liver. But if excessive complement activation, they can again activate C5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and membrane attack complex form, which lead to intravascular hemolysis. So these macrophages, they have receptor for Fc portion of immunoglobulin or complement, leading to extravascular hemolysis when RBCs are coated with these. Now coming on to Coombs test. Coombs test is antigen antibody reaction test. It detects the presence of anti-RBCs, anti-agglutinating antibody by using Coombs test. What do we mean by anti-agglutinating antibody? Basically, anti-agglutinating antibodies are IgG type. IgM are complete or agglutinating antibody. Why? Because IgG exists, I told you, in monomeric form. So it binds to the RBCs, but erythrocyte, they have strong negative charge, which is called zeta potential. It keeps the cells apart with at least 18 nanometer shorter span between the two cells. IgG antibodies, they are smaller and they exist in the monomeric form. So they cannot stick two RBCs together. Span of only 12 nanometer is there between this antigen binding site. Whereas IgM, it exists in the pentameric form and 30 nanometer is the widest distance, which can accumulate various RBCs. So these RBCs stick together and they cause agglutination. Whereas IgG cannot cause agglutination. These are non-agglutinating. So we add anti-IgG. This anti-IgG, if antigen antibody complex are formed on the RBC, this agglutinate the RBC. So detect the presence of this antibody on the RBC surface, which cannot agglutinate the RBC, we use Coombs test. And this Coombs test can be direct or indirect. Direct Coombs test is to detect the immunoglobulin and or complement on the surface of RBCs. In this, patient red cells are mixed with Coombs reagent, and agglutination after mixing the Coombs reagent indicate positive test. So this is the patient blood. RBCs are taken and antigen antibody complexes they are formed, and then Coombs reagent is added. If this complex are there, this Coombs reagent which cause agglutination. So this is positive direct Coombs test. Indirect to home test, it looks for anti-red cell antibodies in the patient's serum. So in this, we combine patient serum with RBCs with non-antigen. Then we add Coombs reagent. Agglutination again indicate positive test. So in this, patient serum is taken, which is having antibodies. Then we add RBCs with no antigen. If antigen are present, this antibody will combine to these RBCs. Then we add Coombs reagent containing antiglobulins. So this will cause agglutination if this antigen antibody complex are formed. So this agglutination is visible grossly, and this is microscopically RBCs, they are glued together. So with this background, we discuss immune hemolytic anemia in detail. It can be autoimmune hemolytic anemia or alloimmune hemolytic anemia. Autoimmune hemolytic anemia, as the word suggests, auto. So normally, so means immune, they are formed against the self RBCs. So normally immune tolerance prevent the formation of autoantibody, but autoimmune disease occur when there is genetic predisposition, exposure to infectious agent, or there is defect in regulation of immune tolerance. So they are further classified into warm antibody autoimmune hemolytic anemia, cold antibody disease, and mixed type autoimmune hemolytic anemia. First, we discuss warm autoimmune hemolytic anemia. They account for 70% cases of autoimmune hemolytic anemia. Here, optimal reactivity is at 37 degrees centigrade, and it is usually IgG mediated. Rarely it can be IgM or A, but mostly it is IgG mediated. And in this, most antibody, they react with Rh protein complex because they don't react with Rh null or Rh deleted cells. Occasionally, they may have single specificity within the Rh system, that is NTE. And in this, most hemolysis is extravascular via splenic macrophages. I told you IgG can weakly activate the complements. Mostly it is extravascular hemolysis by Fc portion of immunoglobulin. It can be idiopathic, warm autoimmune hemolytic anemia, or it can be secondary, which is associated with various lymphoproliferative diseases, neoplastic disorder, autoimmune disorder, and certain viral and bacterial infection, as well as with vaccines. Pathogenesis of IgG hemolysis. IgG attached to RBC membrane antigen via antigen binding region, and Fc receptor which are present on the macrophages of spleen, they bind to Fc portion of antibodies attached to the RBCs. And these Fc receptor, they damage the RBC membrane by pitting the antigen antibody complex. With repeated damage, the RBC lose their membrane and they form spherocyte. And when membrane is lost, there is decreased deformability, flexibility. So they become phagocyte. They are phagocytosed by splenic macrophages. So this is the RBCs. So when autoimmune disease, RBC become antigenic, and IgG antibody are formed against these antigen which bind to the RBCs, and these antibodies, they are recognized by the macrophages. So either the macrophage bound these cell entirely and they are phagocytosed, or they engulf them partially, forming spherocyte which are further destroyed in the spleen, or they can be killed by antibody dependent cytotoxicity by neutrophil, lymphocyte, and natural killer cell. And if excessive antigenic stimulation, two antibody can bind to the same RBC, they can activate the complement, and when they activate the complement, C3p opsonized RBCs, they are also recognized by the macrophages and also in the macrophages in the liver. So again, extravascular hemolysis, or if massive complement activation, they can rarely form membrane attack complex leading to intravascular hemolysis. So factors which affect the severity of hemolysis, number of antibodies which are bound to cell, and subclass of immunoglobulin. Ig3, they are most efficiently recognized, then G1, then G2, and G4 is least commonly recognized. So warm autoimmune hemolytic anemia, idiopathic and secondary. Idiopathic can occur at any age, and it is more common in female with genetic predisposition. Mostly hemolysis is chronic and common presentation of symptom of anemia. Secondary, there are sign and symptom of underlying disorders. and severity varies depending upon the cause. Acute and severe type of hemolytic anemia are seen, which are post-infection hemolytic anemia. So infection can cause severe hemolysis. Left-finding peripheral blood will show moderate to severe normocytic normochromic type of anemia with reticulocytosis, polychromasia, nucleated RBCs, spherocyte and schistocyte formation. Bone marrow will show erythroid hyperplasia. There may be erythrophagocytosis and Coombs test that is positive with polyspecific anti-human globulin as well as with anti-IgG monospecific anti-human globulin. But in 30%, it can be monospecific anti-C3 also in addition. So this is the peripheral blood picture from a patient with warm autoimmune hemolytic anemia. There is anisocytosis and poikilocytosis due to spherocyte formation, due to polychromatophilic RBCs, as well as there are nucleated red cells, red blood cells in the peripheral blood. Treatment, it is guided by severity of hemolysis. Treatment of underlying cause and supplementary folic acid therapy only if mild hemolysis. But if treatment is needed, treatment of choice is steroid. Transfusion should be avoided if at all possible, but it may be given if hemoglobin is critically low till steroids are effective. Splenectomy is indicated in cases with steroid failure, resistant cases, or patient requiring high dose of steroid therapy. Then immunosuppressive therapy in whom all other treatment have failed. And second is immune hemolytic anemia by cold reactive antibody. Cold reactive antibodies, they exhibit increased titer and red cell binding activity as the temperature decreases. So they can be of cold agglutinin disease type or paroxysmal cold hemoglobinuria. Cold agglutinin disease is IgM antibody mediated and it is against I antigen, whereas paroxysmal cold hemoglobinuria is IgG antibody mediated against the P antigen. So first we discuss cold agglutinin disease. So again, it can be idiopathic or primary cold agglutinin disease, or it can be secondary. It is associated with Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia or other B-cell neoplasm. It may be associated with known B-cell neoplasm like squamous cell carcinoma, lung or metastatic adenocarcinoma. Then in certain infection, particularly mycoplasma pneumonia infection and infectious mononucleosis, they are associated with cold agglutinin disease. All cold agglutinin are IgM. Rarely they can be IgG or mixed, usually secondary. And these IgM mostly bind to I antigen, some to the small I antigen, and rarely they can bind to PR antigen, which occur in high titer with wide thermal range. Antibodies, they attach to the red cell in cooler peripheral circulation and they dissociate on proceeding back to warmer circulation. Complement fixation and activation is responsible for destruction of cell which prefer the warmer central temperature. So, pathologic IgM antibody versus naturally occurring cold antibodies. Naturally occurring cold antibodies, they occur in low titer and they have no activity at temperature more than 4 degrees centigrade. Whereas when they become pathologic, they occur in higher titer with wide thermal amplitude causing agglutination. So pathogenesis of hemolysis, it can be direct lysis by membrane attack complex formation by complements, but it is rare due to the presence of decay accelerating factor, membrane inhibitor of reactive lysis and factor I and H which prevent activation of further complements and also temperature incompatibility. Second mechanism of hemolysis is removal of opsonized RBC by C3b and IC3b by reticuloendothelial cells, particularly in the liver, complement receptor 1 and 3. Third mechanism can be mechanical trauma due to occlusion of small peripheral vessels, diagrammatic representation like RBCs, and IgM antibody bind to these. This activate efficiently. C1 is activated, then C2, C4, and C3. Then C3b opsonized cells. They are recognized by macrophage, particularly in the liver, causing phagocytosis. And if they activate the further complement, they can cause intravascular lysis. And C3b, if it is degraded to C3d, this is not phagocytose, it persists and it is responsible for the positive home test. Clinically, mild chronic hemolytic anemia with exaggeration in winter is the characteristic feature of cold agglutinin disease. There may be intermittent burst of hemolysis with hemoglobinuria and hemoglobinemia upon exposure to cold. There may be acrocyanosis due to agglutination of cells in peripheral vessels of hand, ear, nose, and face. So, cold agglutinin versus cryoglobulin. Both can cause agglutination in peripheral blood vessels which perfuse the cooler part of the body. But cryoglobulin, they do not fix the complement on the red cell nor they cause hemolysis. So, agglutination will be seen, but hemolysis will be seen in cold agglutinin disease. Lab finding, there is mild chronic anemia. Agglutinates may be visible in the specimen tube even as large clot which dissolves on warming. Low RBC count with falsely elevated MCV and MCHC due to agglutination. Clumping of cell in peripheral blood smear is seen if pre-warmed specimen is not spread on warm slide. So this is the agglutinated cells seen in cold agglutinin disease. RBCs, they are agglutinated. Bilirubin and LDH level may be elevated. Retic count is also elevated, but spherocytosis is not prominent because they are as such, as a whole, phagocytosed by the liver. Then direct wound test is positive with polyspecific and anti-complement anti-serum. Treatment, usually no therapy is required other than avoiding temperature below which antibody activity is seen. Immunosuppressive therapy in few cases with severe anemia, and plasmapheresis for temporary relief in severe hemolysis. So this is difference between warm antibody and cold agglutinin disease. Warm antibody type, I told it is IgG mediated. So RBC, they are coated with IgG antibody, and when we add home serum, agglutination occur. Otherwise, IgG, they weakly activate the complement and they do not agglutinate simultaneously, and there is extravascular hemolysis by phagocytosis of IgG opsonized RBC in the spleen. In cold agglutinin disease, RBCs, they are coated with IgM type of antibody which exists in polymeric form, causing agglutination and activation of complement. This strongly activate the complement, and there is extravascular hemolysis by phagocytosis of C3b opsonized RBCs in liver. There may also be intravascular hemolysis by membrane attack complex. So this is the same difference which I have tabulated, IgG and IgM type. Now coming on to next cold antibody mediated hemolytic anemia, that is paroxysmal cold hemoglobinuria. This is characterized by intermittent attack of pain, fever, and hemoglobinuria after exposure to cold. It is caused by IgG hemolysin, that is called Doneth-Landsteiner antibody after the name of person who described it. And P antigen specificity has been described later on. This Doneth-Landsteiner antibody is described as biphasic hemolysin, which may behave as monophasic if by thermal amplitude. It is a potent hemolysin which causes significant RBC destruction even in low titer. But antibody require cooler temperature to bind to the RBCs, and complement lysis occur only when temperature is raised. So like these are the RBCs which are Landsteiner antibody. They form antigen antibody complex, and when the temperature is raised, this complement bind and this causes activation, massive complement activation, causing intravascular lysis as well as extravascular phagocytosis in the liver. And if this C3 cell they persist, they survive, give rise to positive. So clinically, it presents as acute transient syndrome almost exclusively in children, usually post-respiratory infection. So children, they present with sudden onset of fever, back or leg pain, and hemoglobinuria shortly or within hours of exposure to cold. Vasomotor phenomena manifesting as cold urticaria, cyanosis of hands and feet, Raynaud phenomena, and even gangrene may be seen. This gangrene is not seen in cold agglutinin disease. So lab finding, they present as acute severe anemia with features of intravascular hemolysis. There are spherocyte, polychromatophilic cells, anisocytosis, poikilocytosis, nucleated red cells, and erythrophagocytosis. There may be reticulopenia also early in the episode of severe hemolysis, but reticulocytosis is seen in recovery phase. And lab can be confirmed by Donat-Landsteiner test as well as positive DCT with anti-complement sera only, as antibody they dissociate from the cell IgG at higher temperature. But positive indirect wound test with monospecific anti-sera for IgG can be seen after washing with ice-cold saline. So, what is Donat-Landsteiner test? In this, we take two test tubes of patient whole blood. One act as control and other act as test tube. So we incubate for 30 minutes. Control tube is incubated at 37, whereas test tube is incubated at 4 degrees centigrade. And after 30 minutes, we incubate both test tube at 37 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes. Then we centrifuge and observe the plasma for presence of hemolysis. If Donat-Landsteiner antibody they are present, hemolysis will be seen in test tube. Whereas if no antibodies are present, no hemolysis will be seen in any of the test tube. Treatment. In acute cases, supportive treatment only as it is a transient process. Steroid given only in severely anemic children, and blood transfusion if required may be given. In chronic cases, we just have to avoid cold exposure. So, differences between this cold agglutinin disease and paroxysmal cold hemoglobinuria, both are caused by cold agglutinin antibody. But in cold agglutinin disease is seen in adult patient more than 50 years of age, whereas it is seen most in children after viral infection. Both can have this acrocyanosis, but they have fever and hemoglobinuria also. Home test positive in both. Donat-Landsteiner test is positive in paroxysmal hemoglobinuria. Antibody class IgM in this and IgG in this. Antibody specificity, it is against anti-I and it is against anti-P. Thermal amplitude varies in both, but it can be up to 30. Hemolysis here it is extravascular mainly, it is acute intravascular. Therapy. Again, it can be idiopathic or secondary to lymphoproliferative disorders, SLE or viral infection. So in this form, with cold agglutinin. So it is significant only if cold agglutinin with wild thermal amplitude, which is correct. Coombs is positive both. Complement. These if they are associated with this means in secondary type. Now we come to drug-induced hemolytic anemia. Uncommon acquired cause of hemolytic anemia. It can manifest as two types. Either drugs of drug during testing, or it may be drug independent, means it reacts without presence of drug, and they are associated with positive home test. So this is, I will explain only like drug independent. So here hemolysis can continue after the drug is stopped. Continuous presence of drug. So drug just induce the autoantibody production, like it is seen after methyl dopa basically. So drug has induced the formation of autoantibody, then it manifests like autoimmune hemolytic anemia only. Second mechanism is drug dependent. Here hemolysis requires continued presence of drug. So it can be by any of these three mechanisms. In first case, drug bind covalently to the RBC membrane, and antibody they are produced against the drug. So this antigen antibody reaction, and a drug is bound to the RBC, so they are destroyed, like it is seen with penicillin and cefotaxime. Second is drug bind to non-covalently to the RBC membrane, And antibodies, they are formed to the new antigen, which is formed by combination of drug and RBC membrane, which is altered. So this antibody which are formed against this new antigen formation due to binding, non-covalent binding of drug to the RBC membrane, lead to destruction of red blood cell. And third mechanism, here drug just alter the RBC membrane where non-immune protein absorption can be there. Like it's seen in clavulanic acid or cisplatin. So here just the non-immunologically absorption of protein on the RBC membrane due to alteration of its membrane by the drug, which then are recognized by the macrophage and the RBCs, they are destroyed. So basically, there is not immune formation and antibody formation, but they are adsorbed onto the RBC membrane. So this is how drug-induced hemolytic anemia can be there. Next, alloimmune hemolytic anemia. So in autoimmune, antibodies are formed against own RBCs, whereas in alloimmune hemolytic anemia, antibody develop to a RBC antigen, which individual usually lacks. So means individual, they are exposed to transfused RBCs from some another person. So here antigen on the transfused cells, they are lacking on the RBC, stimulate the production of antibodies which react only with a cell which possesses the antigen, means donor antigen. So this is seen in transfusion reaction and hemolytic disease of fetus or newborn. First we discuss hemolytic transfusion reaction. It is the result of interaction of foreign antigens on the transfused RBCs and antibodies, they are present in the patient plasma against those antigens. So there is immunological destruction of donor cell. So there can be two types of transfusion reaction. First is immediate, which is IgM mediated. This IgM mediated reaction occurs within 24 hours and there is intravascular hemolysis. It is basically due to ABO incompatibility. Second is delayed type, which is IgG mediated, which occur 2 to 14 days after transfusion. Here there is more extravascular hemolysis and this is usually due to antibodies to Rh system. So comparison of acute and delayed hemolytic transfusion reaction. So acute reaction immediate within 24 hours, whereas delayed reaction is within 2 to 14 days. Underlying cause here, it is usually ABO antibodies. In delayed, other antibodies, often KIT system antibodies. Hemolysis intravascular. Here it is extravascular hemolysis, but rare it can be intravascular also if they are able to bind and fix the complement. Symptom, they present with fever, chills, back pain, hypotension and pain at the site of infusion. Delayed, the symptoms are uncommon. And if rarely there is intravascular hemolysis, then there may be fever and hemoglobinuria. So lab finding, it will show hemoglobinuria, there may be hemoglobinuria and positive that. Home test, here positive test and antibodies, they are also seen in ileum. So treatment in acute, we terminate the transfusion and supportive care is given. Delayed, usually it is mild and no treatment is required. Now next type of alloimmune hemolytic anemia, that is hemolytic disease of fetus and newborn. So this is basically feto-maternal blood group incompatibility. So means mother forms alloantibodies against fetal RBC antigen. So IgG antibody, they cross the placenta and destroy the fetal RBCs in utero. So in this, that is why first pregnancy is not affected. If first pregnancy Rh incompatible, mother is Rh negative, baby is Rh positive, and there is small feto-maternal leak. So mother form antibody against this positive Rh positive cells, and these antibody, they can cross the placenta. So there is no, fetus is not affected, but they are affected with increasing severity in subsequent pregnancy. So little hemolysis in second, then more of hemolysis in third and fourth pregnancy. So lastly, there may be erythroblastosis fetalis. So with increasing successive pregnancy, there is increasing degree of hemolysis because of memory cells. These IgG cells have memory and they can cross the placenta causing hemolysis. So there are three categories. It is usually maybe RHD caused by NTD. It is more severe disease. Second type is ABO incompatibility, which is caused by NTA or NTB. Like mother is blood group A and fetus is blood group B. So there can be this ABO incompatibility, which is more common. But it is less discussed because it is less severe. Why? Because fetus RBCs, they have few antigenic sites for A and B antigen, and antibody formed against A and B antigen are mainly IgM, which do not cross the placenta. Then there may be other non-RH type of antibodies to other blood group system. Nowadays, this RH incompatibility is rare because of the frequent testing and anti-RH given to mother if they are found to be first baby which is RH positive. So this is more common and these can also exist. Therapy. We have to prevent hyperbilirubinemia and anemia. Phototherapy is given to reduce the hemoglobin. And exchange transfusion if bilirubin is rising more than 1 milligram per deciliter per hour or there is significant anemia. Now we come to the second topic of today's discussion, that is erythrocyte disorders due to physical and chemical agents. First, erythrocyte disorders due to physical agents. They are characterized by premature fragmentation and lysis. There is intravascular hemolysis. There are cystocyte formation. This is important because this is a characteristic feature of this physical agent induced hemolysis. And number of fragmented cells, they reflect severity of hemolysis. This is the peripheral blood picture showing numerous cystocytes. There are various type of fragmented cells. They are given various fancy names, like we can say these are the bite cells, these are helmet cell, triangular cells. So various type of fragmented cells. These are together called cystocytes. High power of the same. We can see this helmet cell, we can see this triangular cells and this bite cells. Also there are polychromatophilic cells. So these physical agent can be either it can be microangiopathic hemolytic anemia, it can be macroangiopathic hemolytic anemia, March hemoglobinuria, or it may be thermal injuries. First we discuss microangiopathic hemolytic anemia. They are characterized by microvascular lesion which result in vascular narrowing, and this produce shear stress on the RBC which mechanically injure the passing red cells which are adherent to fibrin stand of endothelial cells. So this can be seen in disseminated intravascular coagulation, thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura, hemolytic uremic syndrome, malignant hypertension, preeclampsia and vasculitis. Basically vessel size is narrowed and this cause. So this will cause destruction of vessel in the destruction of RBCs in the vessel only. So this will lead to intravascular hemolysis with all the features like hemoglobinemia, hemoglobinuria, hemosideruria, etc. Second type is macroangiopathic hemolytic anemia. It is caused by extreme turbulence causing shear stress leading to mechanical hemolysis again. So it can be seen in prosthetic valves, more in mechanical than bioprosthetic valves, and aorta is more commonly involved than mitral valve. Then it can also be seen in severe aortic stenosis or coarctation of aorta, hypertrophic cardiomyopathies, and ruptured aneurysms. Third type is March hemoglobinuria. There is transient hemoglobinemia and hemoglobinuria after strenuous exercise resulting in mechanical disruption of old RBCs. So this will lead to transient hemoglobinuria lasting for few hours only with spontaneous remission. Here there are no fragmented cell on the blood smear, as only less than 1% of RBC they undergo hemolysis. Next is physical agent, that is thermal burn. So acute hemolytic anemia can be seen after extensive burn, with sign of intravascular hemolysis and presence of again cystocytes, spherocytes, and echinocytes in the blood. It results from direct effect of heat on erythrocyte, leading to morphological and functional abnormalities. After discussing this physical agent, we come to erythrocyte disorder due to chemical agent. These chemical agents, they can also destroy the RBCs. Either it is due to they precipitate the toxic effect on intrinsically defective RBCs, that is either enzyme deficiencies are there or other uncharacterized defect, or that can be direct toxic effect which is precipitated if this defect is also there, and third is immune mediated through hemolysis. So we will discuss this direct toxic effect of chemical agent. So it may be oxidative damage or non-oxidative damage. First, oxidizing agents. These agents, they cause oxidative denaturation of hemoglobin. Hemolytic anemia is seen if higher dose of these agents are given, or level become high due to renal failure, or enzyme deficient RBCs are there, that is normal blood level, they destroy the RBCs, or there are some undescribed defect in the RBCs which were insignificant until exposure to oxidizing agents. So in this, hemolytic anemia develop 1 to 2 weeks after start of therapy and disappear after discontinuation of therapy. Severity varies from mild to severe, with hemoglobinemia and hemoglobinuria in severe cases. Morphological changes, they are seen in the form of Heinz bodies, white cells, and hemighosts, which are seen in severe cases. Like this is the peripheral blood picture in oxidizing agent induced hemolytic anemia. There is formation of hemighosts. What are hemighosts? Here hemoglobin is shifted to one side, another side appear empty, vacuolated type. So there may be hemighosts, there may be these white cells, and there is formation of these Heinz bodies. Second is non-oxidative damage. So these can they have direct effect on the membrane causing lysis. It is through inactivation of enzyme, or it is due to binding with hemoglobin. Anemia develops within hours of exposure, which may be acute or chronic. Severity can be mild to severe. Usually it is severe with intravascular hemolysis, like it is seen in arsenic, lead poisoning, Wilson's disease, copper poisoning, water-induced hemolysis. Water causes osmotic swelling and rupture of cells also. Hemodialysis. There is maybe hemolysis fluid, or it may be heat-induced also, and venoms, which can cause hemolysis. So this is the Heinz body formation. So with this, now we come to diagnostic algorithm of this acquired hemolytic anemia. So normocytic anemia in a patient with reticulocytosis, low haptoglobin level, increased bilirubin level, elevated LDH. We think it is hemolytic anemia. And if we can exclude inherited disorder, we discuss acquired hemolytic anemia. So we do Coombs test. If Coombs test is positive, we think of immune hemolytic anemia. If it is negative, we think of other causes like physical, chemical, or drug-induced. In physical trauma, we see numerous cystocyte fragmented RBCs. In chemical, depending upon the damage, we can see Heinz body, we can see white cell, we can see hemighost cells. Then, if it is positive, then we think of immune hemolytic anemia. Then we ask for history of transfusion or history of drug intake. If no history of drug intake or no history of blood transfusion, then we think of autoimmune hemolytic anemia. Autoimmune hemolytic anemia, I told you, it can be IgG mediated or it can be IgM mediated. If it is IgG mediated, it is called warm antibody immune hemolytic anemia, and it causes destruction by coating of RBC by IgG, which lead to recognition by macrophages and extravascular hemolysis But if massive antigenic stimulation, they can also lead to complement activation. And in peripheral blood, we will see numerous spherocytes. So we have to differentiate this spherocyte due to immune hemolytic anemia from hereditary spherocytosis. In hereditary spherocytosis, there is not much of this aniso and poikilocytosis. No more number of spherocytes are there, and Coombs test will not be positive. So spherocyte can be seen in this immune hemolytic anemia, also polychromatophilic cells and other type of cells. So if agglutination is there, spontaneous agglutination, and then we think of IgM mediated cold antibody type of hemolytic anemia, or there can be cold antibody type paroxysmal cold hemoglobinuria, which is IgG mediated, no spontaneous agglutination. And if it is IgM mediated, there will be spontaneous agglutination. Both causes destruction through complement. So I think this finishes this acquired hemolytic anemia. Thanks for your patience.
Wonderful lecture, ma'am. Excellently done.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And especially the last algorithm is the takeaway for the the whole lecture. I think if the students are only able to mug up the algorithm, that is good enough. Wonderfully done. Excellent lecture.
Thank you.
You really worked hard on that. Please just hold the line. We would like to see if there are any questions, and then we'll come back to that. Yes, please.
I am ready to take any questions.
Yeah, if there are any questions, people who are in the Google Meet right now, they can unmute and ask madam straight away. In the meantime, I will check in the YouTube if there are any questions. Very nicely explained, and the whole thing went very, very smoothly. You taught the whole subject very calmly, very nicely done. There are some comments. Dr. Anku Alisha says, "Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a very informative lecture." Right. So I don't think so there are any questions. So I would like you to, ma'am, to just sum up with the final comment before we close the session.
Thank you, sir. If there are no questions, it's good. Means students, they have understood it well.
Yes, they have. There's no doubt on that. That's fine. Okay. I would request you, ma'am, to share the PDF of this lecture so that we can upload it on the Google Drive.
Sure, sir.
So that students can be. So you can just send the PDF either through the email or through the WhatsApp, whichever is convenient.
So I will share it.
Right, and we will share with you the YouTube recording of this so that you can share with your students and for future reference.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. It was a wonderful lecture. We would like to invite you again for some other topic. And,
okay, thank you, sir.
I would like to thank Dr. Anita for referring you. Wonderful teaching, ma'am. Excellent done. Take care.
Okay, sir. I would love to take more lectures.